Okay, so now I'm going to go to another, I'm going to take some sample charts, and these charts are dry. These are fully colored charts, so they're much brighter than the ones we've been using, but you can still be able to see them. They are all coated with color. And not this one. I'm going to start with this one. Okay, these are charts of some famous people and some saints. People are always curious at when I first got into astrology, and I wanted to see the pattern types so much. I drew up maybe 500 of these charts, colored them, and looked at the pattern types just to see the pattern types and the colors of everybody because they were so expressive. So technically, each sign has a color. The bright colors are the summer, spring and summer. The dark colors are the fall and winter. And the logic of colors, each sign has its own meaning, and each color has its own meaning. They relate to each other. So color, the meanings of color, the meaning of music and note, different scales and notes are all interwoven within astrology. So this is a chart of a guy named Baha'u'llah, one of the founders of the Baha'i religion. And when you look at this chart, you're going to see there's one planet on the bottom, Mars. And on this type of form, you see a little arrow there. That means it's retrograde. But all the planets are on one side of the chart, in the dark part, and one planet, Mars, over here. So this is the bucket type. Gets all his energy together in the deep, dark energies, and he projects it out independently, outwardly. This was a founder of a religion, and he was very persecuted. People took great offense. The Arabs took great offense at his new vision of how things would go. So many of his followers were persecuted, still are today. But when you see different charts, these color mandalas, really, Abdul-Baha is another person that was one of the founders of the Baha'i religion. He has a totally different chart. This is, let's just see, moon here is at 15 degrees. Saturn's at about 8, but the moon is a 10-degree orb. So this is within the orb, this line, this outermost line is within the orb of an opposition. So this becomes a bowl, this is a bowl chart. So it has all their energy on one side, and they're always having something to give to the other side. Oh, I know, I have to go back one for a second here. When we saw the first one, here on the right at about 2 o'clock when we're looking at it, when you see the sun, it's in orange. There's the sun in Scorpio. Okay, we're not going to see the houses on these ones too clearly, but here's the sun, and there's in Scorpio. You draw the line, you imagine the line across to Taurus. You imagine the line right across the chart, and if you look at it, there's the moon just on the counterclockwise half. There's the moon over here in Capricorn. So it means the moon has gone past Scorpio, gone through Sagittarius in Capricorn, so it's a waxing moon. This is coming up to the waxing crescent moon. So I'm just going to talk to a bunch of examples so you can see it, so you get familiar with this. At the same time, there's some interesting characters in here. You might have whoops. And this one, the sun is here. This is the bull type, but the sun is here in Gemini at the beginning of Gemini. At the bottom, it would be about where 7 o'clock, 7 would be on a clock. And then when you go from there, you'll see that the moon is over in Leo. So if you do the line from the sun across to the other half, you imagine it, you'll see that the moon is on the counterclockwise. It's going the opposite way of the clock. It's on the, so it's waxing. It's moving away from the sun. And this is just between the, this is in the, from the crescent, between the crescent and the half moon. So it's in the waxing half moon phase, the waxing crescent phase, I think, or half moon. I can't remember what it's called. Sorry. But you can see that the moon is waxing and just in this phase between the crescent and the half moon. Okay. Next one. Sigmund Freud. See, look at Sigmund Freud's chart. And let's just see. 3 degrees. This one, sometimes a chart ends up being right on the edge, and it could be one of two. And really, the person probably shows a little bit of both characteristics when it's like that. Like this one is actually, let's see, the Mars, Jupiter, the Neptune. No, the Neptune is too far away. It's about 8, 9 degrees away, about 10 degrees away from the opposition to the Mars. So this would actually be, it can't be the bull. it would be either that way is going to, either to the Neptune would be the handle of the bowl, but most likely it's obviously the other way, the bigger distance. So the Mars is the handle of the bucket. This is a bucket chart with Mars in the handle. So it's interesting, he had all his energy here, and it was all directed out towards Mars, which was in his fourth house. So this was Mars in the fourth house in Libra. It almost implies the Oedipus complex right there. So there's some things that just stand out to you, but his Mars and passion and sex was the main focus of his energy. So his sun was, here's his sun in Taurus, draw a line across, but here's the moon just counterclockwise to it in Gemini, next sign. So he's just born after the new moon in the waxing new moon phase. He's just right after, at the beginning seed point. Okay, so next one, Swami Vivekananda. A lot of yogis were Capricorns. They just had that inner depth and discipline, and they applied it spiritually. So, but you see the different colorings and different attitudes just by looking at the pattern types. In this place, what added with the color, and then you can see the moon phase. So here, there's the sun in Capricorn at the top. You draw an imaginary line to the opposite side, and then you look to see which side the moon's on. Here, the moon is on the clockwise half from the sun. The moon is over here in Libra, so the moon is actually catching up through Libra, Scorpio side. It's going to catch up to the sun. So it's on the waning half. It's getting darker and darker and darker until it gets to the new moon. So this is the waning moon, and it would be about 93 degrees. So you would just see, or maybe 100 degrees. But the main point I want you to see is to see whether it's waxing or waning. Then you can see what aspect it is. You can look up from the aspect to see what phase the moon is. So during this week, the week ahead, I want you to look up some charts, check the pattern types, and check the moon phase and read them. So you should have, basically when you're studying astrology, you're going to work on your chart more than anything else. But you're going to have a few family members and mom and dad and maybe one or two close friends that you know really well. You're going to have their charts and you're going to be watching them. Not 10 or 20. You're going to have 4 or 5 charts, maybe 5 or 10 charts that you really are your intimate charts you're going to work on or be looking at whenever you see something. So then you can always do hundreds of others later, but you're going to have these main ones, more than famous people, people you know. And then you apply it. So when you're studying astrology, it's different than studying other things. It's not boring because every one little thing you learn, positively, negatively, however you see it, as soon as you see it, you can apply it to whoever's got it, who hasn't got it. You can apply it to everyone else's chart. So the studying is really alive, like nature. It's not an abstract thing. You're looking at this and saying, what does it mean? How does they work? How did they do it? How did they use it? That's so different from me. So it's this is where we start. So this was Swami Vivekananda. His pattern type is a seesaw. There's the 3 planets on the right and all the other planets. You could almost do it the other way, but it didn't quite, there isn't quite the opposition the other way. So that's the seesaw. You can draw a line through the center and 3 planets on one side, 7 on the other. This is Sri Aurobindo, a yogi in India who wrote, very literate, and wrote translated a lot of books, a lot of old different mystical books into a unified concept for reading, and started a city called Auroville. But here's the chart where this is empty shrine, empty shrine, and this is a square. I mean, if this planet was just over a little bit more, this would have been almost a splay type of being all trines. He still has many different trines in his chart, but this ends up being a seesaw chart. 2 planets on one side, the 8 on the other. And you take the one that has the 2 biggest, longest empty spaces. Okay, so now his sun is down here in Libra at the bottom, and you move the line right across. You see it go to Aquarius. Then you see the moon is in Sag. It's on the counterclockwise half from the sun. So you know that it's moving away from the sun. It's on the waxing half, coming up to the waxing, out of the waxing gibbous to the waxing full moon. So it's in that phase there. So I hope this, I think this is being explained fairly clearly. This is another chart, very different chart. This is Richard Wilhelm, the man who translated the I Ching and brought it back, and then was close to Carl Jung and brought the Chinese teaching back. And his chart, I would consider, it's almost all squares and opposition. It's close to the square splay type chart. not exactly there, but it's as close to it as possible. You can see the seesaw 2 or 3 different ways. So this would be considered a splay chart. I'm sorry. Let me just go back for a minute. Now his moon, his sun is in Taurus. We draw the line across. His moon is over here in Libra. It's just coming up. It's in the waxing full moon phase. It's on the counterclockwise half from the sun, and just before it gets to the opposite point. This should be, whenever you look at your chart, these two things, the pattern type and the phase of the moon, you should look right away to make sure they're in the right place. And you got the sense of that. It's the beginning of, or this is Carl Jung's chart. Look how different it was from Sigmund Freud's, which had the one red point going out. His chart is all over the place. It's almost the pentagram. It's almost like 5 different divisions. Not exactly, but it's probably as close to another splay type as you would get. Because you could get several different ways to see the seesaw, and that's your first hint. Maybe it's a splay, but then in this case, the 5 different empty areas puts it into the splay type. Otherwise, it would be the seesaw. So the splay type is always just on the edge of the seesaw. You could almost consider it a seesaw, but it has this unique quality because it falls into these uniform patterns. So his sun is in Leo. You put the line across, and you see his moon is on the clockwise half from the sun. So the moon is in Taurus. It's catching up. Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. It's catching up to Leo. So you see, this is the waning half moon. It's just at the half moon phase. It's getting just past the half moon phase and coming back to getting darker to the new moon when it catches up to the sun. Yeah, we got 20 minutes. I got a bunch of charts to go through. I'm just going to go through it like this. And when I first got into astrology, I loved the colors, I loved the mandalas, and I couldn't draw enough. I spent thousands of hours drawing up these charts. Each of these color charts, they're hand done. They would take about several hours to do it. It's 2 or 3 hours to draw up and to stay focused on getting everything accurate. Now everything's done by computer more, but anyways, this is Marc Edmund Jones, one of the key astrologers. Well, he was a strong influence for me. He came out of the Rosicrucian techniques, so he had his mystical teachings mixed with the philosophy and the astrology teachings, and then he was the practical astrologer, but he also taught for many years. He knew so much. Like he's taught by sending out like 5 or 6 mimeograph sheets, 5 to 10 mimeograph sheets on the old mimeograph sheets, and he would, if you signed up for the astrology course, the full astrology course with him, you would get every week, you would get a 10-page mimeograph sheets, like 10-page mimeograph sheets about a specific subject in astrology. And you would get it every week for 20 years before you finished the whole process of studying. And then once you finish the process of studying his astrology, then you could take the philosophy section or the spiritual section of them, and you get 10 more sheets a day every week for the next 25 years. So he had students studying with him for 45 years, still going through sheets every week, having things to do. This was the old way of studying, but he had a strong influence on me and his special, deeper insights. And he was the person who came up with the idea of the pattern types and presented them first. Okay, so his pattern type, there's 2 planets here. It almost looks like a bowl, but it's not, because the Mars here is out too far away to not be. It's a little wider than the opposition. So it ends up having to be, you could consider it, you would think it's a bowl with Mars as the handle. This would be an extreme pattern of Mars being the handle. You know, a bowl, yeah. No, the bucket, I mean, with the handle. This would be just the beginning of the bucket, but it's still there. But you look at it and you think, she's almost a bowl. It's almost like a seesaw. But in fact, there's a direct focus on his Mars here. And his sun, your sun's in Libra. You draw the line across to Aries. And you see that the moon here is in Leo, catching up it's on the clockwise half from the sun. You look from the sun clockwise, there it is. The moon's in Leo. It's just coming back to the sun. It's going to go through Virgo, catch up to the moon in Libra. So this is like a waning half, just between the waning half and the crescent moon. So it's a waning half moon. Okay.